All right, so this is our actual study session for today, and this will be the pattern that I want to follow for our future sessions. I don't know how many sessions we're going to have yet because I haven't mapped the whole thing out. But again, for me, I will be taking this in early March, so I will be studying everything heavily in the next 4 weeks and then doing exam preparation for about 2 weeks. For today, we're going to look at concepts around what are the use cases for identity access management, what are the features that Salesforce offers, what are common terms you need to make sure you know inside and out, a basic SSO flow, because I think once you have that, it starts to help you put things together. We'll talk about the feature called My Domain Name, and then we're going to go on to hands-on some things that I think are important for us to know in the application. If you can, please go to this link and I'll put it on the chat. Let me see if I can copy it. I can't copy it. If you want to sign up for it now, we'll start the quiz later. So right now you're just going to see a place to put in your name, to select your avatar, and we'll start the quiz after we've done the slides. All right, that's on chat. All right, so I like to start with just the business need for what we're doing, because it helps me put the technical terms against those ideas as I'm going through and learning about them. A lot of times it's very easy for you to think of identity for Salesforce for the people that are using Salesforce for the platform for CRM, for whatever that is, but really there's a lot of different kinds of use cases where you need to consider somebody's identity. Of course, you have the internal employees when they're accessing Salesforce CRM. That's the first one we talked about. But Salesforce also offers the ability for internal employees to use identity for non-Salesforce applications. So that's interesting. If you have somebody that has nothing to do with your call center for case management, they can still be using Salesforce for logging in. You have automated testing users. So if you're using any kind of application that lets you continually test your application, they would be using a Salesforce license. So they would be needing access to CRM. Same thing for robotic process automation users. There are also non-human testers, but that's a different use case that they need access to it. Then you have external consultants or contractors. Of course, that could be people maintaining your Salesforce application, but maybe you have lawyers or other contractors that need access to your CRM data. That's also another use case. You have external partners, so people that are maybe selling or reselling your product. They might need access to either the platform CRM tools or Experience Cloud. You can have web and mobile applications that need access to your CRM data and its services. And you also have non-human users that are using the APIs. And then there's a whole bunch of, these are the main use cases. Can anybody think of any other use cases where you might need to do access for Salesforce? And so keep these in mind as we're going through all of the different tools that Salesforce gives you. How does it tie back to the different user and what features they could use? And so looking at the features that Salesforce provides, everything in green is available on the middle column for employees. And all the way on the right, you see what benefits customers and partners. So My Domain is actually not available for customers, only for employees. Same thing for user provisioning. And then you see the list: connected apps, app launcher, single sign-on, profiles and permission sets, multiple factor authentication, which is not contractually required by Salesforce. Auth providers, if you want to let somebody sign into your Salesforce org with Google, you can, or Facebook or LinkedIn. And then you have Experience Cloud and self-registration. And so you can see here how the features work for some use cases and not from others. So if you had a partner and you wanted them to do self-registration, they can, but your employees cannot do self-registration. They have to go through a different type of access to be allowed into the org. And again, keep these in mind because not today, but in a future session, we'll talk about license types. And all of that ties back to this. Your use cases, your features, and your license types will all come together. And again, each one of these features were all part of the Identity Basics module that we had for today, and they explain to you exactly what they are. One of the examples that was interesting to me is the connected app. You can use it to add, you can use it to add basically a bookmark to your app launcher. So if you want people to be able to go to another system outside of Salesforce, you can add it there. And if you enable single sign-on on that connected app, then your Salesforce user can be in Salesforce, click on that option and be single sign-on to that application. If you don't enable single sign-on, it just works like a bookmark. But either way, it was interesting. Connected apps can be part of your app launcher to let people access applications from one location. Does anybody have questions on any of these features? All right. Let's go on to My Domain. And so there's a lot of changes coming from My Domain. My Domain is actually required for some of these features to work in Salesforce. And so I thought this list was really good for us to know, because you might get a question on the exam about, you need to run Salesforce Optimizer, but you don't see the option to run it. Why is it not available? Well, my domain name is not enabled, which is why you need to go do it. So that would be the scenario. How do you make sure that these features are available on your org? My domain name really is a subdomain name of salesforce.com. And so if you go to disney.my.salesforce.com, you're going to see Disney's login page for their Salesforce application. I don't work for Disney. I just found it when I was looking for something the other day. Obviously, I did not try to log in because I wouldn't do that. But subdomain names to me are interesting because they're not hard to guess. And a lot of companies just use their company name. Features that require my domain name are if you want to work on different Salesforce orgs in the same browser, you need to use my domain name. I don't know how many of you guys have multiple orgs that you're working with on one company, but I know we do. And so that's very helpful. Also, when I'm testing between sandboxes and I want to be in different environments and all in Chrome, it's very, very useful. If you're doing any kind of authentication providers, those social sign-ons I was talking about for Google and Facebook, you need to have my domain name enabled. If you want to brand your login page, again, it's required. Everything around Lightning, which actually I didn't know this, and again, I'm learning so much as I'm going through the certification. Lightning components require my domain name. I had no idea. And if you want to integrate to APIs, you need my domain name, like we already talked Optimizer. And the documentation that I looked at only listed these 3 clouds, but I have a feeling it's every cloud out there. So all the industry clouds probably also require it. Hey, Anna, what's up?
When you enable my domain, it's very interesting that many people don't know. I figured out working as a Salesforce consultant just from my team, they don't know that, they didn't know that you can brand the right-hand side of my domain. So you can brand the left-hand side with custom colors and logos, but you can also insert a link to a blog page or a website or a video from that your client wants. And if it's a web page that always changes, then every time you try to log in, it will always be different. And they really, really like it when you tell them and they try different things. Like my clients, they loved that you could customize it.
That's really awesome. And when we demo it, I would love to hear more from your experience, because what I've seen is the right side image can only be an image. It wouldn't let me do a domain. And so we can talk about that when we get there, because we'll do a hands-on demo on that today.
Yeah, it can be a link that leads to anything. It can be a blog, a video, a link of absolutely anything. Link of an image or a web page.
We'll play with it. For some reason, it didn't work for me, but maybe I did something wrong. So we'll work on it together. But definitely my domain name is very important for you. And by the way, all new orgs have my domain name enabled by default. And so Salesforce just does it for you. Whatever account company name they use when they created your org is what they use. A long time ago, because I have been in Salesforce for a long time, you used to have to open up a case with Salesforce to change my domain name, but now you can edit it on your own. And we'll talk about what happens when you change my domain name from one setting to another. But again, my domain name is really important. You really want to have it enabled in your company because it will enable all these features. So let's talk about, and this is something I wanted to highlight in today's overview, because I got confused when I was writing the quiz questions about what was allowed for what. And so there are 2 very different things in Salesforce. One is identity verification, and that's what you see listed first. So Salesforce allows you to use the features you see here, SMS, sorry, phone call should be red, I should check that out. Email, certificate, security key, that's all for identity verification. For MFA, you're not allowed to use SMS, phone call, or email. Certificates vary, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then for MFA, you have the other options. You have the security key, the authenticator application, third-party, Google, Microsoft, and then built-in tools that you might have on your computer, like fingerprint readers or anything else like that. And since we're recording this, and we're just going to change this right now, because we're not allowed to do phone verification with anything. And so I just want to highlight that depending on what they're asking you for, if they're asking for identity verification, you have different options than if you do for MFA. And we're not going to talk too much about MFA today because that's really its own topic, probably a whole hour's worth. And when they ask the question, you want to make sure you understand if they're asking you for MFA factor or just identity. SMS is enabled by default by Salesforce. And to get that turned off, you have to open up a case. If you have any other identity verifications enabled for your user, so let's say that I had registered my phone for SMS text, it will not let me verify with an email. Email is always the least desirable way to verify your identity. So if you have anything else, that does not become available anymore. And again, MFA will cover in a future session because there's a lot of details around the 4 options that it does let you do, and the certificates when they're available and when they're not. Hey, Anna, what's up?
I just wanted to mention that Salesforce Authenticator mobile app for MFA, it can actually be not just a Salesforce Authenticator mobile app, it can be other Authenticator mobile apps like LastPass, for example. For some of our clients, we used Salesforce app you're mentioning, and for others, we used other apps.
Yeah, because you can register other services there as well. And I think that also goes with, you can use Salesforce Identity for non-Salesforce applications. And so that's why the mobile app also supports those. So if you're a very small company and you don't have a big Microsoft contract and you're not using Azure or something like that, and you want to use Salesforce for all of your identity for all of your applications, you can. And so that makes sense. And I hadn't thought about it, but it should let you register any applications since it supports the applications. Thank you. So terms we need to know. And so these are terms that you'll get very comfortable with. Identity provider, it's exactly like it sounds like. You're figuring out who the person is that needs the access, and it's going to be a person. It could be, like we talked about the use cases, right? It could be systems, it could be automated testers. It does not have to be a human that's being going through the identity provisioning, being authenticated. It could be non-human use cases. And then you have the service provider, and the service provider is going to be really any service. Salesforce is a service provider, but if you build your own web application and you want to use the Salesforce authentication, you can. And so it's any application that needs to know if the users that are on it need to be authenticated. SAML is Security Assertion Markup Language. And so this is the industry protocol that is used between any system that they're trying to do identity verification. The request always comes from the service provider because they're the one that's saying, hey, is this person allowed or are they not allowed? And they send that to the IDP. SAML assertion comes from the identity provider once they have processed the request, and it can be yes, that person is allowed, or no, that user is not allowed. The assertion is not always a positive thing. You might come back with no, that person does not have access, don't proceed. SAML is XML based. And it's mostly human readable if you're used to looking at code, but it's something to keep in mind if you're working and you haven't done a lot with code. It's going to look like jargon, but if you just take your time and look at it, it really has things like username, colon, you can see what the username is. And then I'll have like, I forget the other ones, but there's a type in there, what kind of authentication are you requesting and those kind of things. Then you have OAuth 2.0. You might have seen it in the past if you've ever used Data Loader for Salesforce, and you log in, it's going to say, do you have permission to do these actions? So OAuth is really asking for permission. So this person has already been authenticated, and they have access to the system, but you want to know, what are they able to do? And OAuth is about what they're able to do. Are they able to access data? Are they able to access particular APIs or functions within the system after they've been authenticated? So authorization has to do with, are you using particular resources from the system? And authentication is about just the who is getting access to that particular system. OpenID Connect works on top of OAuth, and it's what's doing the authentication for OAuth. And so this can get a little bit complicated. So let's talk about this some. Anybody have questions or comments? Yeah, all right, let's keep going. I took this straight from the module from Salesforce because it's as simple as it gets when it comes from a SAML flow. And so this is where, let's say you try to go and access Salesforce. So Salesforce is a service provider. It's going to go and say, oh, I need to do a single sign-on request. This person is not logged in. It will generate the request, and it actually doesn't go straight to the IDP. It goes to the browser first. The browser then redirects to the link of the IDP, which is why the browser is in the middle. The browser is going to verify the user's identity, and then it packages that SAML assertion saying, yes, this person is approved, or no, this person is not approved. They send that back again to the browser. The browser goes back to the link for the service provider. And then there's one more step. The service provider wants to verify the assertion. They want to make sure that nobody got in the middle and is saying, yes, this person is allowed, but they're not the original trusted IP that they sent the request to. If everything ticks and ties together, the user is going to be allowed to sign in, and now they have access to Salesforce or the service provision. If you're having any challenges with SAML and flows, the Beer Drinker's Guide to SAML is actually really great. The way he breaks it down and talks about it, it was very useful. And you can very clearly see, if you don't have a wristband, you can't get beer. So you need to go to the tent that's going to give you the wristband first. And that wristband and that tent is your IDP. And the tent serving you the beer or whatever else it is that you want to drink is going to be your service provider. So it's a great article, definitely recommend it. If you have any questions and we schedule the session for Sunday, then we can talk about them then.
Will the slides be available after this?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to post them on our meeting page, and also on it'll be on a meeting page because they don't go on YouTube, but you'll get the recording on YouTube. So I know we're running a little behind, so let me move over to our hands-on demo, which is over here. And so you want to get very familiar with, obviously everything we will get today is going to be in their setup. When you go to identity, there's a whole bunch of options. Eventually we'll go through all of these, but today we're focusing on identity verification. And remember that slide that had the two columns for here's identity verification and here's MFA? This slide is all around identity verification. It has nothing to do with, has one thing to do with MFA. And you can see here, the ability for users to sign in by text is already checked, and I cannot uncheck it. I need to open up a case with Salesforce if I want this to be unchecked. And then it lets you add different features. And so I can say, yes, I want people to sign in with a security key. I want them to authenticate with a certificate, or if I want them to do built-in items. And as I check things here, they're going to be added to my user record. The ability to register them will be added to my user record. There is two settings here around MFA. You can enable MFA for all users at the org level. And so we'll talk about MFA in another session, but this is one place where you can enable MFA. And then you can also require verification when they are registering. So that way you get both, they log in, they verify who they are, and then they are able to implement the MFA authentication method. It's best practice to have this one checked, but this is my dev work, so I haven't really been worried about it. You want to require identity verification for email address change. So you want them to be able to verify the old and the new address before it will be changed. Hopefully I don't get logged out there. And then we have sending the email out for email changes. And this one, these two are basically the same thing. The difference is the use case. The one that you see here, require identification for email address, is your internal users for Salesforce. And the one that you see down here, just like it says, applies to experience builder sites. They made it its own separate setting, so it can function differently. Your internal users always should verify the email changes. For experience builder sites, customers, and partners, you may opt to have it be different. If you want to let the person install Authenticator and you want them to use geolocation, you can do that. What that means is they get a little bit less requests to be authenticated, but you want to make sure that your security team has approved that you enable this, because this means that if I'm traveling the world, wherever I am, you would be able to say, yes, this person is in whatever country you want to mention, and they're going to be able to access their data from that country. If you check the second option and you say only allow trusted IPs, then only if you set it up in your site, in your org, as a trusted IP, would they be able to do both. Some security teams will have you uncheck this because this does open up a couple potential issues with accessing data from Salesforce when you're not in the right region or location or those kind of things. What's up, Anna? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to mention that when I would enable it for clients and they would download, they would follow my guide of downloading to their phone the authentication app, and then it tells them they're all set. So they verified everything through Authenticator, great job. And then they feel like they're all set and they get into their org. But then once they log out, the next time they log in, it's going to tell them every time, hate passwords, do this one thing. And they tend to dismiss it. But if you teach them that they just have to do it one more thing, they just have to just follow the instructions one more time with their phone, and then it will disappear forever.
Yeah, and the other thing that you have is, let me see. I don't want to go too far into session settings, but I think it's on this page. There it is. Lightning login. And so Lightning login also works. I think it's peculiar that this particular item is here, but not on the other page. But once you let people log in with Lightning, it also works together with the Authenticator. So I don't have anything ready for us to talk about this, but keep in mind, some of the settings are in multiple places. I'm focusing on the identity verification because it's easier to get it from one page, but those are also repeated here on session settings. And then there is one more around Lightning login that's not on the other page. So let's go back to the other one. The other thing that you can do for identity verification is once you have set your session policy, whether it's standard or high assurance, you can say that only people with a particular type of session are able to use these features. Reports and dashboards is the only thing on the UI that you can use this for. You can block them, raise it to high assurance, or you can only have it raise it to high assurance if they're exporting or printing. So what this means is if you don't have MFA enabled, which of course you should, if you don't have it enabled, maybe because you're on a trusted device and it's on a trusted network, so it's not required, when they go to export or report, they would have to do MFA before they're able to do this. So that's what this means. And then there's a whole bunch, and this is a good example of Ladies Be Architect. It's a little bit outdated. The Ladies Be Architects video only has 4 or 5 options here listed because that's how many Salesforce used to support. But here now you have quite a few more of which items you can enforce somebody having to have a high assurance session before they can actually do these actions. And you can see these are admin rights around accessing data, changing policies, creating users. So these are the more powerful features that we have as admins in the org. And so you're able to limit them to be high assurance. Questions around identity verification? No? All right, let's keep going. Let's talk about my domain. This is where, Anna, you're talking about the right side, right? So here I can go to edit it. And I actually did edit this. I created 2 dev orgs. And by the way, when we were playing with all of these identity features, plan that you might get yourself locked out of your org because you might set a setting that just you can't undo or you can't come back from. And so just make sure you're not working in any of your companies, even sandboxes, definitely, of course, not production, but create a dev org or two. I have two, one for IDP, one for service provider, because I'm playing with that, going back and forth, and make sure that even if you lose it, it's not a big deal. What do you think, Anna?
I just want to say that this is quite a dangerous page. If you should enable enhanced domains like it is checked here, but if you're working with an org where it is not enabled and you just decide to randomly enable, you will be locked out for an extended period of time measured in minutes, which you can have a heart attack if you don't know what to expect. You will be locked out. Everybody will be locked out. It will just go blank. And with clients, typically I warn them about it. And then we set aside time when nobody's in the org. That's what I would do it. And yes, it does go blank. They don't have a heart attack. And then once Salesforce assigns all this enhanced my domains to all the pages, the URLs, then the org is back. Of course, you can log in and everything is working.
Yeah, and the other thing to know is if you decide to change your my domain name, you need to check if it's available or not, right? And it goes through a provisioning process. After it's completed provisioning, you can activate it. When you activate it, you will be logged out. So if you weren't paying attention to what you typed, I might have done that, and you forgot your username, you go, oh no, I changed my username and I don't remember what it was before, because you have the old domain name, which was probably something gibberish because Salesforce created a developer org for you. And I wanted this to make sense to me, which is why I named it service provider MGR, right? My initials. So it would make sense to me. The other thing you see here is use partition domain names. That's this part of the domain name. This is optional. You don't have to do it. But depending on the type of environment you're in, the dev -ed changes. Trail, your playgrounds have a different partition domain name. I'm trying to remember the other one. So Trailheads, of course, production, playgrounds, devs, Scratch orgs are different, and there's one more that is different. But either way, just partition domains know that there's a portion of the domain name that goes away. So if you're worried about number of characters and that kind of thing, it will affect this. And I'm going to hit cancel because I don't want to change anything. To Anna's point, I would just get logged out immediately. When you do change your domain name, and here you can see my previous domain name, which is what I forgot, by the way, because I forgot my username. And so Salesforce will redirect from your previous domain name to your current domain name one level back. So if I keep changing this domain name, it only remembers the prior one. It does not go back to the oldest one or all of them or any of those things. As long as this domain name is here, nobody else can use this domain name. So if you were to try to sign up for this one for whatever reason, you would get that it's not available. If I change it again and this rolls, this name then becomes available for somebody else to use. So if Disney ever decides to stop using Disney.mysalesforce.com, not going to happen, you would be able to use it once they've released it a second time. And here you can choose to not redirect if for some reason you're changing security policies, names, whatever's going on, you can opt to not redirect it and you can log it as well. Policies, here you can prevent people from logging in from login.salesforce.com. This is actually a best practice because people need to know your my domain name to be able to access to the right place. Most people forget to check this, but it is a best practice. And you can also prevent any API logins from here. And again, this you definitely want to test thoroughly with all of your development teams, because if you do this, you will break them. If this is not checked like this is here, and your domain name changed, what happens is your applications can continue to go to the prior domain name. What they're going to get is they're going to get a message saying the domain name has changed. Here it is. And then they ask them to retry with a new one. So they're notified of the change, but they have to retry. It doesn't just redirect the API requests. So keep that in mind as well. And then here, if you want them to, if you just want to redirect them, you can choose to do that. This is where you can change your logo. I did not upload one. we're going to ignore the authentication services right now because as you can see, I've been playing and this is one of my developer orgs. We'll do that in a future session, but I can change the colors in the background and then I can change my URL on the side. And so this is where I make you guys laugh because everybody that knows me on this call knows I love sunflowers. And so I pulled a sunflower page. And so let's save that. And let's go to my domain name in an incognito, incognito window. And here's my sunflowers. And so Anna, this is where I wasn't able to make it a website. And so do you have an example of something that I could use here? Because I know I tried just like
Yes,
google.com
I'm
and
going
that
to send it
didn't
to you
work.
right now. I just grabbed it. So this is one of my clients. And this was this is government executive's website. And this is the link that I inserted. And every time they would go to log in, it changes to their recent news. So they loved it. It's in the chat.
Yeah, there it goes. I was trying to paste it, but it wasn't letting me. So now let's save it. And if I refresh it, it will update. That is really great. I don't know why I had a failure. It just gave me, maybe I put in the URL wrong. That's very nice. Thank you.
You're welcome. So what sometimes people would like to do, clients, is they would want to create a web page and give you, the consultant, me, the consultant, a URL. So it's the same URL, whatever example.com/blog post one, let's say. And what they will do is, however their business changes, whatever the recent news is, they would go update that page. So it always has the fresh stuff. You don't have to do anything about it by you just putting this one URL and them always changing the page however they want.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing that. Like I said, I put google.com and it gave me a little unhappy face that it wasn't loading. Maybe the problem was that I used Google and I didn't try anything else. Awesome.
Yeah, I was curious if if the page just needs to be iframe enabled.
That's true, because maybe Google's the one that wasn't allowing the setting right. So
Yeah.
that's a good point. Yeah, that's a great point.
Not sure if it's doing the same thing here. I'm kind of just assuming.
Yeah, and this one might be allowing the resource to be used from another iframe to your point rate, and Google probably has that lockdown. So yeah, makes perfect sense. Password policies. Let's talk about password policies. What I want you to see here is, and again, I've been using Salesforce 12 years. I've never noticed this. You can customize your message. That when somebody gets locked out or needs assistance, normally it says contact your company's administrator for assistance, which is very useful, right? I'm sure all of us have cringed at that. And I'm like, oh, look, I can actually make it whatever I want. And I can have the link that they click on go wherever it is. So if I wanted to go to my internal ticket system to go do their own thing, I can do that. So I wanted to show you that. And let me see. So, and that's all it is. You can see it exactly the way it looks here on the page and it shows it to you. And the same thing for the locked account preview. As admins, and again, this certification is around identity and access. So you want to make sure that people are obviously accessing the system fine. And so once again, I did not know this was here. There's a setting on password policies. As you can imagine, you can make passwords as complex as you want. They can either never expire, really bad idea, or they can be very frequent, how many you remember. And again, this is all my defaults for the DevWorks, so they're not the best practice. How complex you want to make the passwords. The password question cannot contain the password. How many attempts they can have, the lockout. If you want to obscure, which you should, this should be checked, obscure the secret for password resets. And if you want them to wait 1 day before the password resets. This is what I didn't know. And so if you disabled this particular feature, I would not be able to reset my own password using Apex Code or SOAP API call. And so once you uncheck this, I couldn't find anywhere online that even Salesforce would be able to re-enable it for you. And this only applies for self resets. So even if you uncheck this, so people cannot reset their own password through code, other people can reset people's passwords for that person using code. So it doesn't just lock out the whole method, it's just for you as an individual. I happen to love this because it makes it very easy to reset a password without having to change the email and then do the long way. But again, keep that in mind. It does warn you that you cannot undo this. So I'm going to check it back. Cancel. I want to get to the quiz. So let me see under users. What I want to show you here is, if you remember under identity verification, I had enabled different ways to do identity verification for myself. And so here, I don't have any other third-party authenticators connected, but if I did, the option is available here. I do have Salesforce Authenticator connected to this particular user. I can disconnect it here. I can register the key. I can use Lightning Login because that is enabled on the session security session. And then I can also do a temporary code. These codes, the way they work is they can last, just like it says, from 1 to 24 hours. This code can be reused. Here I can set how long it's going to last. And I can reuse this code to do identity verification after I've entered my username and password during that 8-hour window as many times as I want. And so that code is not a one-time use code the way we're used to seeing with a whole bunch of other things, right? And that's why I'm calling it out, because it's a little bit different. Once it's been generated, you can see it on the user's record. The user, here we go. Actually, sorry, you can't see it on the user's record, but the user will be emailed that particular code. You can expire it if for some reason it needs to be expired. The only users that don't get a temporary code is API-only users. Those work a little bit differently. They do not get emailed that code, but you can generate one if they need it. And again, however many verification methods you have enabled on identity verification will be available here. So that's everything I had for a demo. Does anybody have any questions before we go on to the quiz?
Good.
I guess I should have been paying attention.
It's okay, Brian. We know how you are. All right, let's go on to the quiz. Have you guys signed up? I have 0 players. Let me refresh my page to make sure that. And you can use this on a browser, you can do this on a phone. It will work in both. I might have broken it. Oh. And you don't have to put in your real name. Normally, you'll be surprised. I put my name on quizzes like this as Sunflower.
I did put my name and I registered, but it says no one is there.
Yeah, I got the same thing, Marlene. It says no result yet.
That's what I'm seeing. Let's see. Oh, look
Oh,
at that.
there it goes.
I was wondering when the music was going to play. All right, we're going to start the quiz. And so the way this works is, for most questions, you have at least 1 minute to respond. And so the faster you answer, the more points you get. The single sign-on works for your Salesforce org only, true or false? So can you use single sign-on only for your Salesforce org? All right, for true and false, we're gonna give it 30 seconds, and then I'm gonna go to the next slide. And so you can use single sign-on anywhere from Salesforce to any other application. You do not have to be a Salesforce. You do not have to just be single signing on to Salesforce for it to work. All right, let's go on to the next one. settings can be updated by an admin for these password policies. Oh, I should have told you how many to check. I don't remember how many you're supposed to check for this one. So I think 3 right answers is what we're looking for.
Do we get partial points, or if you get like one wrong, you get the whole thing wrong? How's that work for these?
I think you get the whole thing wrong if you get one wrong.
So
But
we're
this is
going
my
off
first time using it.
Salesforce exam style. Got it.
Yes,
I was
absolutely.
gonna say just like that. Like the use process of elimination. Like it's not this one. I know it's not that one. So it's got to be these 3.
Yeah.
That's normally what I do. Like we're sharing testing strategy. See, that's usually what I do. I'm like, well, I know it's not that one. So what's the other one? So 3, you want to select 3 options here. All right, we're up to 8. So we're gonna, I think this tells me, nope, 9 voters. I don't know how many people we have in it. Oh, everyone's answered. Oh, it tells me. It's really nice. And so the right answers are an admin can set password policies for expiration time, password history, allowing the use of password set for self resets. You cannot re-enable this any way, shape, or form, so nobody can do this. And max length is set by Salesforce. Other features were what password complexity, number of passwords to retain, and I don't remember the other ones. All right, let's keep going. By the way, at the end, it's going to give us a score. So the faster you answer, the more points you get. All right. What is my domain feature on Salesforce? Well, I guess that was not going to be difficult for you guys to guess. I guess I forgot to do other options.
For a second, I thought there was like a
Job.
trick question. I was like, there's only one option, but you needed to like wait a couple seconds till the next options showed up.
And so I uploaded from an Excel document, and I guess on this one I forgot to add the false answers. So there we go.
I was planning to choose that answer anyway.
What are some features that require my domain to be enabled and set up?
How many options do we pick?
I don't remember. I think there's one wrong answer. Yes, there's one wrong answer. So these first 4, you're required to do my domain name, app launcher, you do not. And there was a whole list of these, right? So we have the industries here. If you want to use multiple Salesforce orgs within one browser, you need my domain name set up, and I forgot the other ones. But definitely not App Launcher. App Launcher is available to anybody, and App Launcher is available to both customers and internal users and partners. All right, question 5. And by the way, we'll just go as long as we are planned until 7:15, so we'll just stop then. So what are features of a temporary identity verification code? I'm trying to see if I could. Doesn't show me the answers even when I look it on the other side. All right. I think there's 3 right answers. There might be 4. Remember, I'm studying with you guys. I know 2 of these are wrong for sure. I don't remember if the 3rd one's wrong or not. See, now I know, just like Salesforce exams, I need to tell you how many options to pick in the question because I'm clearly forgetting. So we have one person pending. I apologize, there were 3 wrong. I couldn't remember if this was true or not. If you can generate unlimited codes per user. I'll have to look at my notes, but there is a limit to how many codes you can generate per user, and I think it's an hourly limit. But the first 3 are correct. So the expirations can be used multiple times, and it's available for all products on the platform. Selecting expire all user passwords expires passwords for all users, true or false? All right, everybody has answered. And so this is a trick question on purpose. So this is a setting on Salesforce that is expire all users passwords. There are 2 use cases that will not be expired. One is if on the profile or on a permission set, the user has password never expires, the password would not expire in that scenario. Or if you are a Experience Cloud user, so if you're not an internal user, it would not expire. So it really is just your Salesforce users that don't have that permission set.
Maureen, how about like if you're the person initiating the expire command, does it also impact you? I wasn't
It,
sure.
it will, as long as you don't have that password never expires permission set or profile setting, you will, your password will be expired. It does not happen immediately. The next time you go log in into Salesforce, that's when you're requested to reset your password. So it's not like everybody that's on the application gets kicked out immediately. It's when their session ends and they need to re-authenticate when they're going to see they need to reset the password.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, I was surprised with this when you went to read the documentation, like, but it says expire all user passwords. How can it not be all if it says expire all user passwords? Anyway, we have 5 more minutes, and like I said, we can keep going. I have 24 questions, but we'll wrap up at 7:15. And so this is question 7. What is multi-factor authentication? Well, I guess my answers can't be that long. I think there's 2 right answers. Oh, there's 3, sorry. And so just because I can't read all of it. What are features of social sign-on? And we did not cover this today, but it was on the modules.
How many?
There.
2, 3?
3, I think, because I can't read the rest. I'll do better on the next quizzes, I promise. Yep, the first 3. Because social sign-on is not the same as single sign-on. And you can use social sign-on to log into Salesforce org, which I was surprised by this one. Question 9. Oops. In all editions, passwords cannot contain the username and cannot match the user's first or last name and cannot be changed to password. True or false? And so these are settings that you cannot change in password policies. These are automatically enabled for all users in all editions. So if you're like, I have a test user and the username is test.user at whatever I was using, I could not use the password to have test in it. And also, if you want to change it to something very simple, even if you have no requirements on your password for complexity, you cannot change the password to something like password. So. And there's 2 right answers here, I think. And you can't read the whole thing, so don't worry if that makes sense. Yeah, there's 2 right answers. And so you have to designate one of your session types as high assurance. And then once you've done that, you can go into the identity verification page, and where you had that long list of options where on the reports, you can block it, require high assurance, or only if they're exporting. That's where you can't read here. So again, sorry about that. But MFA has nothing to do with high assurance sessions. And you do not need to enable IP ranges for high assurance either. And this gets done on verification settings, not on user interface. This will be our last one. Connected apps require you to set up single sign-on, true or false. If you don't set up single sign-on on a connected app, it works as a bookmark, but you're still allowed to set it up. You're not required to do single sign-on. So let me see if I can. So I think that unless we were to finish the whole quiz, you're not going to be able to see your score. So I apologize for that. I'll see if I can export it. And then I'll schedule our session for Sunday. And if you guys want to keep going through quiz questions, we can. And then also I'll probably have created more by then, and then we can just keep working at it. I would love feedback. What did you guys think about today? And I'm good with good feedback and bad feedback. Whatever you guys think we can make it better, I would love to hear.
I think it was personally a good session, you know, to get a feel for one, what we're gonna get into, you know, and two, you know, just as we move forward, you know, what's gonna work and